Cindy, this is like great day for me. I admire your work. I admire you as a businesswoman and as a creative. You are a wonderful mind. And I wanted to have you on Transatlantic because I'm sure that your ocean is so fascinating that we had to cross it. So welcome to Transatlantic.
Thank you, delighted to be here.
So what's going to happen, we're going to go through like 7 questions, like the 7 seas, because we believe at Transatlantic that each of us is an ocean of erratic thought and it's like wild feelings. So I'm going to ask you like 7 questions. And hopefully I'm going to uncover a side of you that many don't know, hopefully. Okay, so let's go with the first one. Now, there are at least 50,000 species in the ocean, but as many as 2 million remain a total mystery. Now it adds up to roughly 2.5 million. This is equal to the amount of viewers that in 2009 your TED Talk collected. It's amazing. 4 minutes of TED Talk collected like 2.5 million viewers. We are a species among millions of species, and we are kind of weird as human beings. We look at things in a weird way. Sometimes it doesn't make sense. So my question for you is right off the bat, do you remember the exact moment that something sparked in your mind and you came up with the idea of like make love, no porn?
Yep, no, and the answer to that is no, I don't. Because, you know, the funny thing, Simone, is that you know, people regularly ask me, you know, Cindy, when was the moment that, you know, you did this, you had this revelation, and, you know, there have never been any of those moments. Everything in my life and career has happened by accident. Things have been a gradual realization. No, that there was no one moment. And, you know, and I also just want, if you don't mind, to correct your, you know, very nice and very flattering opening. But actually, 2.5 million is a very low viewership for my TED Talk. And the reason for that is because back in 2009, I became the only TED speaker to say the words, "come on my face," on the TED stage, 6 times in succession. For that reason, TED refused to post my talk on TED.com.
Oh, okay.
I am listed on TED.com as a speaker, but up until last year, you had to click through from TED.com to find my talk on YouTube. And that is very unfortunate because if my talk had been on TED.com, it would have many more than only 2.5 million views in the 11 years that it's been online. I asked over the years if TED would reconsider this decision, and they didn't reconsider it until last year. Last year was the very first time that TED actually posted my talk on TED.com, which is a huge shame because I was the very first person 11 years ago to stand up on the TED stage and publicly identify the huge global social issue of porn becoming sex education. Today, you can't move without seeing a media story about that. And it's a huge shame that I and Make Love Not Porn did not get the views and the awareness that we deserved because my talk was not posted on TED.com.
Well, thanks for the explanation and thanks for articulating this so well. This is very interesting and it definitely like, you know, defines like your character, your personality, and you're totally fair. And this is true. I mean, it's like, I think I remember I couldn't find the talk last year because I actually looked for it like a few times. And then just recently before interviewing you, I wanted to look at it again and it was very easy to look at it. So thanks for articulating this so well. Thank you so much. Second question. Lucinda is a female given name of Latin origin and it means light. And not because I have in front of you, but it's one of my favorite names. It's beautiful. Now, Lucy is the abbreviation of like Lucy, Lucinda, Cindy is the abbreviation. Now, like, it means light, so you are light. But to me and to many creatives across the globe, you are more than just light. You are a lighthouse, a reference point, something to look at, always someone that shines the path. But I do believe that even like the most beautiful, fascinating lighthouse has to have someone that shines the path for herself. Who was that person for you?
So, you know, I am inspired every day by many, many lighthouses, because I'm inspired by anybody and everybody who is working to change the world to be the kind of world that we all want to live and work in. And I am blown away every single day by the number of people who are doing that all around the world. And so I see many lights all the time.
That's awesome. And I have to say, I mean, you inspire people, and that's one of the greatest like power that you have in your words. Like, you know, I follow your LinkedIn. It's impossible not to follow your LinkedIn because you're very like presence, very loud, and like, you know, we need this kind of words. We need this kind of attitude. Third question. Through generally described as several oceans, the word oceanic, it constitutes just one word, ocean. That makes me think of you. I read on Wikipedia, you have a long ass page of Wikipedia, and I read that many waters came together to form Cindy Gallop. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. You were born in Buckinghamshire, England, and you grew up in Brunei. You are half English, half Chinese, but from your mother's side, there is like Malaysian blood running through your vein. You remind me a bit of my daughters because they are half Filipino, half Italian, and from the Filipino side, they are American, Irish, and English. So it's a crazy cocktail, okay? So you are as many as ocean into one. How this affect the woman you are today?
That's a great question. And, you know, I think first and foremost, Simone, I would say that all of that has given me a truly global perspective on everything I do. You know, I was born in the UK, I grew up in Asia, as you've said. I've, you know, lived and worked and traveled around the world. And all of that adds up to give me a truly global perspective, which A, has been very useful in our industry, and B, is very useful, you know, working on my own startup and on, you know, projects that I consult on for clients and the like.
That's awesome. And the global mind perspective is something that I can relate to, being like, you know, an immigrant came to this country and like brought different culture and different attitudes into like, you know, the American culture. Now, talking about battle and fights and blowing shit up, I'm gonna ask you like a 4 question. So the first naval battle dates back to the 5th century. Many warriors fought through the history. Among them, there are 2 warriors that fascinate me a lot, and they are the Trung sisters. They are national heroines in Vietnam, and the pair led an uprising fight in the 1st century to overthrow the Chinese slavery, which had continued for over 1,000 years. And guess what? They were successful. They crushed them. They crushed the dictatorship. Now, your fights are famous, fascinating. Your LinkedIn title say very loud, I'm the Michael Bay of business, I blow shit up. Do you ever miss a companion, a sister that come with you along your fights?
No.
Just no, just dry no.
Yeah.
You like to fight on your own.
Yes, I mean, And a couple of points on that, Simone. First of all, I'm talking to you from my apartment in New York, where I've been in lockdown for the past 10 months,
Right.
and where I anticipate being in lockdown for many more months to come, because New York is starting to spike again with COVID, and things are getting serious again. And and so I make a point of counting my blessings every day. And one of my blessings is that I am somebody who is by nature a true solitary. I am enormously fond of my own company. My idea of bliss has always been to be in my apartment on my own with nowhere to go and nobody to see. And now I get to do it every day. And so I am, I'm somebody who is happiest on my own. This is why, I am single, very happily single. I have never wanted to be married. I've never wanted children. I don't even want a relationship. I cannot wait to die alone. I date younger men casually and recreationally, and that does me just fine. And I'm deliberately very public about all of this because we don't have enough role models in our society for women and for men who demonstrate you can live your life very differently to the way that people expect you to and still be amazingly happy. And by the way, I'm going to pick up on your ocean metaphor. Are you familiar with the Vendée Globe?
No.
So I wasn't either till a couple of months ago. I have a very dear couple of friends, Susan Danziger and Albert Wenger. They live here in New York, and Albert Wenger is he's a venture capitalist. He is a passionate sailor. He has a boat.
Mm-hmm.
And I was staying with Albert and Susan because they're part of my quarantine bubble at their beach house in Amagansett a couple of months ago. And Albert told me about the Vendée Globe, which I'd never heard about before. The Vendée Globe is the world's toughest solo round the world ocean race. So it started as a French event, but it's international because sailors compete from all around the world. However, ever since it started, it happens once every 4 years, it has always been won by a French sailor. And there are various Brits and Italians trying to, beat them. And basically, the boats start out from a French port called Les Sables d'Olonne, and they circumnavigate the globe. And this takes, the winner generally has done it on average, it takes about 3 months. And during that time, you are at sea completely on your own. You're obviously in contact with your team and with the land, but if anything goes wrong with your boat, you've got to fix it on your own. It's an enormously risky race because you are basically in the middle of the world's vastest oceans. If anything happens, there is no help. You are nowhere near land. You are unlikely to be near your fellow sailors. You're lucky if you are. Just a couple of days ago, one of the sailors in the lead, his boat began taking on water. He had to abandon it. Fortunately, another one of the sailors came and picked him up in his life raft. That was very fortunate. And I mention all this because in order to succeed in this race, you have to be very comfortable with being completely on your own for a very, very long period of time. And I'm somebody who is very happy being on my own for a very, very long period of time.
What a beautiful answer. See, if we stopped at no, I wouldn't pull out this beautiful answer that you articulated so well. So thank you so much. I knew that was something. Thank you. Okay, so 5th question. In 2003, you won the Advertising Woman of the Year award, and you actually were crowned by the Advertising Women of New York. In transatlantic term, you are the Amerigo Vespucci ship. Something totally unique, a word on its own, a beauty of its own. Your style is unique, the way you talk is unique, your approach to life and creativity is unique. Now, there is a new ship, a young girl that is about to sail and start a journey in advertising. what would you say to her before she retrieved the anchor?
Sure. So, and this is something I get asked regularly. Several years ago, this would have been, I guess, about 6 or 7 years ago, I was at Cannes giving a talk, and in the Q&A session, a young woman in the audience said to me, Cindy, what is the single piece of advice that you would give a young person going into advertising today? And I said, don't. And then I said, let me explain what I mean by that. Don't go into advertising to go into advertising. Go into advertising to make what you want to happen, happen. And I said, what I mean by that is absolutely come into our industry, take a job at whatever agency is lucky enough to hire you. And by the way, one of the things I emphasize to young people as well is take a job at the first agency that offers you one. Okay, it's not that easy to get a job in advertising. It doesn't matter where you start your career. Don't think you have to hold out for one of the big names. Just get a foot in the door, because you will begin learning the moment you do. So come into our industry and then take a long, hard look around you and identify what you think is missing that you could introduce to the industry. Identify what doesn't seem to be there that you think should be there. Identify what you would love to have in the industry that nobody else is doing, and then do that. And you can either start doing that at the agency you're working at, or you can jump ship and start it on your own. And I recommend the latter path, because when you bring your freshness of perspective and your objectivity to identify what is missing in our industry, and then you then deliver it as only you can, one day, in a relatively short space of time, giant holding company X will buy it from you for a shit ton of money. That's your quickest path to wealth creation in our industry.
It's awesome. And this kind of advice is very precious for someone that lives in Europe. There's a different mentality and mindset between European and Italy, particularly, and American, right? We don't have the kind of pioneer spirits. We don't have that kind of mindset. So I think this is super precious for anybody back in Europe, in the old continent, that tomorrow is about to start a journey in advertising. Thank you so much. Almost see the shore, 6th question. Water, darkness, and fog as a recipe for prophetic visions. On the evening of October 17, 1954, in a Nob Hill apartment, one of my favorite poets, Allen Ginsberg, had a terrifying vision. Seeing the facade of the Sir Francis Drake Hotel eaten by a kid. That kind of vision served him as the incipit of the Owl, one of the most amazing manifestos of our generation. I remember the first line of the manifesto. He recites, I saw the best mind of my generations destroyed by madness. You talk about tragedy in the advertising business many times. What's the biggest tragedy that you have seen so far?
The biggest tragedy is the one inherent in what you've just said, Simone, because when Allen Ginsberg wrote that line, when he said the greatest minds of our generation, he was only talking about and referencing and thinking about men. The biggest tragedy of our industry is that an industry whose primary target is women, because we are the primary purchasers of everything, or the primary influencers of purchase of everything, an industry that targets us, that exists solely to persuade us to buy things, is entirely dominated by men. That's the biggest tragedy of the advertising industry. And it's a tragedy because it gives rise to a second tragedy, which is that in a male-dominated, patriarchal environment, the single biggest business problem that our industry has is sexual harassment. Our industry is rife with sexual harassment. It is endemic, it is systemic, it is rooted in the culture, it has been for literally centuries. And that is tragic because sexual harassment has, for centuries, been managing women out of our industry. Because sexual harassment destroys women's careers, derails women's ambitions, crushes women's dreams. And the tragedy inherent in that is that, therefore, sexual harassment keeps out of leadership in our industry the female leaders who would make diversity, equality, and inclusion happen. And as long as our industry continues to be male-dominated and patriarchal, and to allow and enable sexual harassment to flourish, which it still does, even as we speak today, towards the end of 2020, our industry is hemorrhaging female talent, creativity, and skills. It is hemorrhaging Black female talent, creativity, and skills, because all of this is intersectional. Racism is as bound up with sexism and sexual harassment. And we have therefore not even begun to see what a golden future for our industry could be when it welcomes in and leverages and deploys the talents and creativity and skills of women and people of color. That's the tragedy.
Thank you so much. And I have to say, when I was like penning down this question in my mind, I tried to play your answer. Sorry, like I didn't want to play your brain, but and I hoped that would have been the answer, because as a father of like 2 little girls, hopefully they're gonna find a better word out there. I wanted this to be the answer articulated so well, because I 101% agree with you. And I try to have on my show as many as like female leaders as possible. In fact, as a matter of fact, after you, next week, I'm going to be interviewing Judy John. So.
No, we love Judy. And by the way, you've just reminded me, Simone, that, on one of my last trips to Cannes, it might have been last year, actually, I was very touched. I was walking along the Croisette, and this man stopped me. I can't remember his name. I know that he worked at Wunderman Thompson. And he just stopped me and he said, you don't know me, but I just want to thank you for making our industry one I don't feel I have to tell my daughter to stay away from.
Exactly. That's the reason why. Thank you so much, Cindy. Thank you. Last question is the same for all our guests. So if you were to name a wind that blow your sails, what would the name be?
I think, this is a pretty obvious answer, but really it's just equality. Okay. Because what I want to see is equality of opportunity for everybody in our industry. And right now that does not exist. There is no equality of opportunity for women. There is no equality of opportunity for Black talent. There is no equality of opportunity for off-color talent, for LGBTQ talent, for disabled talent. Neither is there equality of opportunity for older talent, apart from the older men who are in power and bizarrely never think that ageism applies to them, just to everybody else. And so, I just want there to be equality of opportunity for everybody, because, again, we have not even begun to see what our industry could be when there is equality of opportunity and equality of creative opportunity for everybody. The bar in our industry is set so low when it has been set for centuries only by white men. We have not even begun to see how high that creative bar can go when there is total equality of opportunity for the creativity and the talents and skills of the rest of us.
Cindy, thank you so much for answering my question. First of all, for letting me cross your ocean. And I was right. I mean, how could it be wrong to say that your ocean was fascinating? I could talk to you like for hours because I do believe that you even like, I'm like, you know, I'm a study of like, you know, English literature and American literature. And I think you graduated in English literature. Am I right?
Yep.
Right. So I know that you're so fascinating. So, but thank you so much. Listen, this was awesome. And we are so happy to have you here like on Transatlantic. Thank you, Cindy.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.